Right. I am going to declare us live, back in business. API, back in the Florida swing right after Honda. I was down there. You're going to have to bear with me. I was a little all over the place this week, but I think we're good to go. Myself, Ben Razza, here with Sal Vetri and Jeff Ulrich from Awesemo.com. Fellas, I hope you're doing better with me. I flew home this morning. I am a little tired. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, I got two kids under 5 years old, so I'm always tired, but I definitely know that feeling as well after a big weekend and traveling home. So I think we're all maybe got a little case of the Mondays here. It's no big deal.
Yeah, we'll get through it. But, right before we started the show, Sal, I was asking you about XFL. I know you've been grinding with that. How was the weekend?
Yeah, so this XFL weekend was, I would say, out of the 4 weeks, not the worst week, but it ranked third for me overall so far. So a slight loss. And you just saw a lot of the chalk not getting there. Still like 5-6 guys end up getting there. But the big game on Sunday that was supposed to be really good was okay in some areas, but the highest owned pieces and the highest owned game kind of fell flat on their face.
Yeah, I meant to watch more of it. I swear I'm going to get there. I didn't this week. I was more focused on the Honda. I didn't end up going, but I did go to the DFS Open, as most of you guys know. It was really fun. For people I met, great to meet you. Hope to see more. I'm going to drag both of my boys here down there next year. We'll have a good old time. I do want to say right off the top, though, Super Draft sponsoring the show, which we really do appreciate. If you guys haven't signed up, they're changing their game with multiplier mode. It's a new way to play. No salary constraints. You get really unique lineups. We've talked about that a lot on all the shows, but especially the Wednesday night show. You can find some guys at really big multipliers. It brings guys into play that maybe wouldn't be on the traditional site. So if you haven't signed up, use the promo code Awesemo. Get $20 free on your first deposit of $100 or more. So did you guys, Jeff, did you watch Honda? Did you catch what I thought was a great Sunday?
Yeah, no, I definitely caught the back half of the Sunday round, which was nice because that's really when it started to get super interesting, right? The front nine was kind of just everything evening out, and then it was back and forth, obviously. I started to get really tilted when Mackenzie Hughes started to pull like his Jordan Spieth act. That was tilting, but luckily for me, I had a piece of Sungjae Im in the betting market from in play, and then I had top 6 on Benny Ann. So betting wise, it was just another great week for me, quite frankly. I'm running like the freaking sun just in bets. But, DFS and Sungjae Im helped me with DFS, pushing into well into the positive. So nothing big. I had too many scrubs bust, but it was a good week for sure.
Yeah, Sungjae Im, I could hear the cheers. It seemed like everyone in the world was on him. And it was someone, like I said, I wrote up Sungjae. I liked him a bit, but certainly not as much as everybody else. Sal, did you catch any of the Honda? I mean, it's such a unique, -6 was the winner. That is something outside of majors we just never see. I personally like it though.
Yeah, I like it too. And I saw something on how they're trying to now move the Honda, to the end of March to try and encourage more players to go to it. So that'll be good to see next year if that actually happens. I know there's a WGC that once they leave the Florida swing, so I don't even know if that'll actually matter. But yeah, I watched a good amount on Saturday. Sunday I watched some, but I didn't get to watch the finish live. I was kind of just looking at Shot Tracker, and it was awful at the end of it because you didn't actually get to see any of the shots on that. I was downtown here in North Carolina, but I pretty much just got to see Tommy Fleetwood birdied, Tommy Fleetwood bogeyed, and that was about it for that one. So not real much on the edge of your seat anticipation, but DFS ended up, I tried a different thing this week this was one of our first really early locks. So at 6 a.m. I was looking at a lot of just the qualifiers and really just satellites. And there was a ton that 30-person fields. There's only 12, 13 people. And so got in a good amount of those. And that's where made most of my hay for just bigger ticket qualifiers. But had a good amount of Sungjae. The pieces in some of the larger field stuff, not really. I went very underweight on Ann and Fleetwood. So that ended up hurting.
Yeah, that's one thing, on all the shows, we're trying to make a bigger push. Contest selection is gigantic. If you can keep an eye on things, you can keep some overlay, you can find some softer fields. It just makes it easier on yourself. You're still going to need effective teams, but why not? And it was a weird week for me. Russell Knox, no surprise, he killed me. That's what he does. 6 of 6 I thought was going to be non-existent just because it was so hard, but the weird thing about a course like that, Jeff, is, Beniani shoots 6 over. It wasn't like he was even out of the cut line. He didn't need a miracle round. He just needed a good round on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It is one of those things. I mean, the cut was +3. It almost pushed to +4 too. And
Yeah.
if it had pushed to +4, that would have really saved me. Although there would have been a lot more lineups in play, right? So it's give and take. But yeah, that's the thing. And like I had people, DMing me, tweeting at me, oh, Anne's gone, my week's done. I'm like, dude, he needs like 2 under tomorrow. Like he can easily make the cut. We see guys make runs. So it's just a different week, obviously. He was the one that made the big run too, and I mean that really helped me out, along with going a little bit heavier on Sungjae. So, I don't know what to think of Benny An yet this week, but definitely a good week for him. I mean, dude's got it. I mean, he's got a ton of talent. We'll see if he ever gets over the hump, but it was a great DFS play for sure.
Yeah, I mean, same story with him. Even late, can't seem to make the putts when he needs to. But I guess we'll start. We're going to talk a little Honda here. We can start with the champ. We'll start with Sungjae. He gained across the board, heavy lifting with the iron, Sal. None of that's a surprise. Made the putts when he needed to. This seemed like a matter of time. Does this change kind of where you're viewing him, or is it more just like validating what I think we all knew about Sungjae with the talent?
Yeah, it seemed like we were waiting to happen, and we're waiting for it to happen, and we have this week Arnold Palmer, where he kind of shot up for the first time last year with the T3, so we can see what he does there. But in the betting market wise, yeah, I don't think you're going to see that number for a little while in the 30s. And I think for the most part, it really doesn't change much for him on how I'm going to approach things. I'm probably just not going to get to as much with just not as great numbers, the price point coming up in DFS. But yeah, I mean, last week we saw it, and just kind of take away some of the things. He was playing fine on approach heading into that week. He had one of the better approach weeks in the entire field, and that was one of the strongest, if not the strongest, just correlating stat for me, at least heading into that contest. So it was pretty cool to see all that pan out. But yeah, he looked fantastic, and it seems like a lot of people are on him at that mid 30s. It seems like most of isn't it like the last 3 or 4 winners have been in like that 30 to 40 to 1 odds range?
Oh yeah, it's been. I mean, it's amazing. I say it's been a great year for golf betting. I haven't hit it outright in 2020, but that's neither here nor there. There's been some good, reasonable guys that have won. And yeah, Bryson, I'm still salty about that. Should have cashed that ticket. Jeff, I don't want to put you on the spot. This is just a question I meant to ask before the show, but in chat, I see a lot of the regulars in there. If any of you guys know this is just something I was interested in. Do you know how it works with Sungjae and Benny An with their obligation for the military? I was thinking about that after he won. He's not absolved with a win, is he?
No. So I don't know the exact age range, but they have to complete it by a certain age. So the only exemption I know of is if they get a medal in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think that's what Benny An is waiting for, to see if he can make the Olympic team. And the other factor is I don't really know any of the politics around it. Like, I don't know if they can just be like, I'm not South Korean anymore, or what that is, or if they have that option. But I've heard Sungjae talk about it a bit. I know it was brought up that he said he really wants to make the Olympics and try and get a medal. And I know Benny An is probably in the same situation. So An's obviously getting up there in age. Like, he's getting to the point where if it even affects him, again, I can't really find. I know I searched for this last year at some point, but I couldn't find any relevant info on it. But he's getting to a point where he's going to have to do it soon if he is in that boat. And Sungjae's obviously got a lot of time to wait still. I'm sure he'll probably try, and if the Olympics is his only out, I'm sure he'll probably give it another 4 years. That would make sense because he's obviously talented enough to do that. So,
yeah, I mean, I believe Benny An was in Brazil trying to get a medal for that reason. So we'll wait and see about that. Go over the optimal real quickly. There was actually a chop in the large field tournament last week. We had Lucci D and CJDTL, 472.5 for both of them, but the teams were different, which is just a coincidence. It's kind of a weird thing. No surprise. They obviously both had Sungjae, and one guy didn't have Fleetwood, but he rebounded with Benny An. All good guys. Cam Davis played well, Berger, things like that. But I want to go to Fleetwood next, Sal. I mean, you knew the stories were going to creep up. Another one right there over here. He's won in Europe, but not here yet. Did you see I know you didn't watch it live, but the water ball on 18 was obviously disappointed when he only needed a birdie.
Yeah, to close it out, I ended up seeing it. I saw, what was it? One of the patrons yelled in the on the backswing. There's something about that, but yeah, probably pretty annoying for him. But yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about the like the choking it away thing, because I mean, if he doesn't make the clutch birdie on the shot before, it's not even in position to potentially have that narrative on it. So yeah, it is what it is. He just missed the kind of the edge there and ended up with a water ball. Not great, but it's funny. In one of the contests I was in for like one of the 444 tickets, I was in second, and I was at that point I had Sungjae, didn't have Fleetwood. The other guy had Fleetwood, so I needed like something catastrophic to happen for him to drop or a playoff, and Sungjae just wins with like a birdie. So I saw that water ball happen on Twitter, and I was hoping for something even more catastrophic at that point.
It was like, you knew Steele had to go for it because he was 2 back. I really thought there was no chance that Fleetwood would play at the water. I'm in your camp. Like, I think it's all these guys, they can't win until they win. Paul Casey couldn't win, all these other guys. I don't make a big deal of it, Jeff, but it was disappointing to see Fleetwood not even have a putt at it, considering where he was after the drive.
I was pretty convinced he was going to make birdie on that hole. We were going to see a playoff, and Tommy was probably going to win. And that, like, I actually even hedged a bit. I think it's like 3.5 to 1. I didn't hedge much, but just to get myself a little action on Fleetwood. But yeah, it's one of those things. I agree. That's always my take. I mean, these guys don't win, and they're chokers until all of a sudden they do. I mean, if you keep putting yourself in position, it's going to happen. Like we talked about this, I think, last week. Like Rory McIlroy, like he doesn't finish every time he gets in contention. He just gets in contention more than anyone else, right? Like golf is such a hard sport. So the people who use the narrative on Tommy are ridiculous. The guy's won like 3 times over in Europe, and we're not talking like scrubby Europe events. We're talking like fields with actual PGA pros in them, like going up against Dustin Johnson. So I don't even know where this narrative is coming from. Like he can't win because he hasn't won in the States. It's ridiculous to me. It's the guy who's finished like runner-up in the US Open twice. He's already a top player in the world. The really winning the Honda Classic, is it really going to put him over in your mind? Like to me, it really isn't that big a deal. Now he did screw up that shot. I thought it was a little ridiculous. I agree. Like to be that aggressive. Probably just aim at the trap or like just off the green and give yourself the putt at it at least. But that's what he chose to do. He went for the cut shot. It didn't work. Like I said, it doesn't change my narrative on him at all. He's a quality player. He's going to break through for a big win soon.
No doubt. Yep. And yeah, you should have played. Mackenzie Hughes had the right idea. Just hit it 75 yards left into the grandstand, and then you get a drop.
It's so ridiculous. Oh my! Let's just talk about that for a second.
Go ahead, please.
So much. How does he not get a penalty stroke for hitting it 70 yards left into like
deep in the grandstand?
I can't stand it. Like it's so ridiculous. I mean,
the minute I saw it, it's just like, well, that's gone, and it's not that big a deal. Like there is something not right about that.
10 times a worse shot than Fleetwood hit. Like it's not even close. So
no argument there. Last thing I wanted to talk about, Sal, the hot topics were Daniel Berger and Billy Ho. They both came in playing well. They set up basically perfectly. Like the Florida guys, they were chalk, as we knew. Berger, certainly did his part. Billy Ho had a rough Sunday. Anything notable there? Is that kind of what we expected? Both did find the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's what. So Berger was one of my more higher owned. I had a lot of Billy Ho as well, so that was disappointing. But yeah, now you get 3 straight top 10s for Berger. He's been playing well. I think they are now. You see Billy Ho back in this field now at a cheaper price point, stronger field. Still maybe a little bit too expensive when we get into that, but. Yeah, I don't think there's much to take away from it. I thought Berger just all around his game looked pretty good. There was really nothing that stood out as bad. And like you said, just down the stretch, Billy Ho couldn't hang on or at least stay there for a top 20.
Yeah. Listen, that's, to put a bow on the Honda, and then we'll start taking a peek at API. We knew this coming in. It wasn't even, I was there. It was windy, but it wasn't anything where it's like, oh, this is crazy. It's just Jeff, it's just a course that really is difficult. There's water, there's awkward shots, and I don't think we're going to see, maybe not even close to a -6 winner outside of a major this year. It's just truly a different animal at PGA National.
Yeah, there was rumors on Twitter. Oh, it was playing easy this year. We might see like -14. Don't think so.
Nope.
It's just the greens run fast. They're hard to hold. And they talked about this on the broadcast. The way the course is set up, it's into crosswinds all the time. So players don't know where the winds are going. And when all the greens are surrounded by water and there's no margin for error, it's just hard all the time. Like, unless you get it on a completely calm day or something, or it just rained last night, it's pretty much the only time you're going to see players go really low on that course. So I agree. I love it. I love this event almost every year. It doesn't always treat me well, but it did treat me well this year. But it's just good for viewing. The last 3 holes coming down are just awesome. They should probably play like the PGA here one year or something like that, but they probably won't.
That's something, yeah. I mean, you guys think, Sal, you think we'll ever see, I don't want to say ever, but I heard some grumblings on Twitter, play a PGA, play a major here. I would love to see it. I don't know if the players would, but that would be pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I'd like to see a U.S. Open here. I think it makes sense. The entire back nine is just flooded with water, so it sets up for it. Just try and get. I mean, it profiles out very much like one, and I guess that's your way of forcing some of the professionals to actually show up to it. Some of the top end guys.
No doubt. So speaking of the top end guys, that's the one thing we didn't dig into, and it's honestly because I almost forgot these guys were in there because we didn't see them on the weekend. So Ricky, Brooks, Justin Rose. We knew there was going to be some carnage because that's what PGA National does. If you're off, water doesn't care who you are. Jeff, is there one guy, we talked that I know you had mentioned with Brooks's knee, you're certainly a little concerned. Ricky's been off. Rose has been playing bad, but I wasn't concerned. He blew up on Friday. Is there any of the 3 that are more concerning to you as we head into API here?
I would say Rose is probably the most concerning. I mean, dude lost like over a stroke on approaches. Ever since the equipment change, he had that one hot putting week at Torrey Pines, but it's been kind of really inconsistently bad for Justin Rose. He's still a quality player. I mean, I'm not going to put it past him that he won't figure this out, but he's getting up there in age too. So I think for me, with where Ricky and Brooks are age wise and stuff like that, I'd be more concerned about Rose. He might have just lost a little bit of a step. The ball striking isn't quite as good. And again, it does come down to it does coincide with an equipment change. I can't say if that's all the whole entire reason behind this, but it always scares me a little bit when guys make big changes and then something like this happens. Of the 3 for this week, I would say I'm most interested in Fowler. He had a really good round 2, missed the cut by he had a 12-foot putt for eagle on the last to make the cut. He gained over 2 strokes on approaches in round 2. I think Ricky in Florida is someone, especially if he's got low sentiment, I'm always interested in for a bounce back. So I'm the most bullish on Ricky, and I'm the most kind of hesitant on Rose right now.
So I tend to agree. I'm really concerned about Rose. I also bet Rose at 40-1 to win the API already, full disclosure. And that's just on principle. I just can't not bet him in this field at 40-1. We'll get into that in a second. But Sal, I want to get your take on these guys because for me, Brooks is the most concerning. And maybe I'm digging too much into it, but I think he's a little nervous with himself. Usually he shakes off stuff like this and just says like, I'll be fine. I'll play it better. He did not seem himself talking about his knee and whatnot. What did you make of the 3 big guns that all missed the cut?
Yeah, I mean, Brooks putter, that was top 5 worst performances that we've seen out of him. He just looked really bad. He hasn't put a complete round of golf together, at least on the PGA Tour yet this season. But I kind of agree with Jeff in terms of most concern with Rose right now. He's just losing everywhere at this point. It's not even like one thing that you can get confident behind. I would say, though, all these guys are premier talents, but coming into this week, like your 40-1 number, I think it's fine. Like, although I might not want to play these guys in DraftKings, but we've seen Rose just come out of cold slumps and win events before, similar to Molinari last year here. And I mean, maybe sets up this same year for him. Yeah, Rose is probably the guy that I'm most concerned about. Ricky and Brooks, I'm okay with. I think we've seen more positives out of Ricky just on the season as a whole to feel the best about playing him, to feel the best about getting a 30-1 number if that's still out there on him at this point. But yeah, I would say that for me, Rose is the most concerning. Brooks pretty close.
Crazy. And it's a long season. The narrative can, Brooks wins a couple majors again. It's another ungodly year. As Ricky breaks through and wins a major, no one's going to remember that he missed a couple cuts. Same with Rose. Rose adds a second. I mean, those reign king at the end of the day. But any final thoughts from you guys on Honda, or you want to get to API?
I would just throw out a couple players, maybe just one player even to keep an eye on. Russell Henley had like a really bad break late in his round. He got a fried egg in the bunker and ended up taking a double bogey. He is really hitting it really nice right now. He's not playing this week. He'll be in the Players though, and I imagine he'll be at Valspar. I would keep an eye on him. He's still owned. He's really swinging it well right now.
Chat, just remember, I didn't say it. He did, because I'm the biggest Russell Henley truther, and that's expensive when you.
I talked about this with Ruslan on the Wednesday show when I was filling in for you. I feel like you and I lose the same, like to lose with the same golfers every week. So
I can confirm, because just as I talk about every week, you and me did the draft with Pat Mayo at the beginning of the year, and when I look at the teams, your team is who I would pick. You've got Rory, you've got Louis, you've got Ricky. These are the guys that I love. So we go down together with guys like Russell Henley.
All right. Good to know.
Anything else from you, Sal, when you were looking at the Honda here?
Yeah, I mean, just Benny Ann, I was pretty impressed with after the first round. I thought I was going to be, at least DFS wise, just being under the field on him. I thought it was a good move. And then, I mean, you go from being like, he was almost dead last in the contest, like 130th or something, to finishing T4th after your first round. I thought that was pretty impressive. Maverick showing the pulse, I thought was pretty cool as well. But outside of that, not much.
Yeah, Maverick, I mean, it's transitioning. It was cool to see him not just on the West Coast. Obviously, the game is in very healthy shape. But turning the page, before I do, I want to say, chat, I'm glad to be back. I had a good time in Florida, but I did miss the show on Wednesday, and I'm excited for everything. If you guys hit that thumbs up, easiest way to help support what we're doing here at Awesemo. And if you guys don't know, we're making a big push with our podcast form. So all these YouTube shows can be found on the podcast at the platform of your choice. Go check that stuff out. Make sure to like, subscribe, rate. It really does help us. But all is right with the world. Rory McIlroy up at top. These are the type of tournaments I like to see. We're at API. We're at Bay Hill. This is Arnie's course, as everybody knows. And we have, I'd say, a stronger field. It's not players-esque, Jeff, but we got some big names here, kind of like Genesis. And Rory kicks us off. What were your first thoughts when we saw the pricing?
Yeah, I was definitely interested to see if Rory was going to be too cheap. That was the first thing I looked at. 11.8. I mean, he's almost at 12K, which kind of tends to be the DraftKings threshold. So I think that's a good thing, because I think a lot of people with Rory's record here would have been looking to just stuff him in every lineup if he was like 11.4 or even lower than that. So I think 11.8 will at least keep things a little bit interesting. I do expect he'll still be chalky. Obviously Fleetwood up there, 11K is going to be interesting. I mean, people are going to have to decide whether they want to ride him, whether he's going to have the same upside as Rory, because at that price, you almost need a win. So, he's going to be another polarizing option. I think that he could end up being like the GPP pivot for players who just want to, think that he's just one start away here. So I think those two right off the bat, obviously interesting. Matsuyama and Bryson are probably the same as Rory and Fleetwood. I think you can almost think of them as pairs. I think Fleetwood and Matsuyama are probably the two low sentiment guys based on price and course history. And then you have Bryson and McIlroy, who I assume will be the two popular ones out of those four. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the top, breaking down just having looked at these for like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, Rory was the champion in 2018. Bryson was the runner-up then. Fleetwood was third last year. He could have easily won last week. Decky, a little wild card-esque, I guess, Sal, but we've got options up top, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job pricing it. So, I mean, every time we've seen Rory this year, it's a T5 or better. But at the price point, he probably has to finish T3, win the thing, but we know he can do that. We saw it in 2018. He's just been fantastic here. So, yeah, if I'm in this range right now, I like all the way at the top, all the way up at the bottom. So Rory is fine for me if you want to pay for it. And then Xander at the bottom is interesting. Before the salaries came out, I really didn't know what they were going to do with the price points of Bryce and Xander. I thought Brooks would still be higher. You have Ricky in this field and Sungjae coming off the win. So there's a lot of guys in the 9 and 8K range that I like, and just messing around with it for like 30 minutes. I think I'm completely fine just fading the whole 10K plus range and seeing if you could load up on some of a balanced 9 and 8K range build.
Interesting. I mean, that's something that we've seen throughout the year, just when win equity is kind of dispersed. If you survive, because I mean, when you do that, obviously, Sal, and I know you know this, like if Rory wins, you're basically cooked.
Yeah. And in that range, Rory at the top and Xander at the bottom are the most appealing to me, just factoring in price and upside. I do like Bryson a lot, but probably more in the betting markets, 18, 20 to 1. I think he's just appropriately priced. Early on, I think it's going to be similar to what Jeff was saying, like Hideki and Fleetwood become the guys that you don't have as much interest in. So we talk about this right now, but if that ownership changes, or if that's the way that ownership is going to play out, then you can clearly get on Hideki. I think it's just win upside now when they're at almost 11K and Fleetwood right at 11K. I don't know how much win upside compared to the other guys that they have.
What do you think about Xander specifically, Jeff? Because he's the guy, we haven't seen him at Bay Hill before. I have a tough time with him, to be honest. Like, I sometimes feel like he's wildly overpriced, but then he gets it done in really strong fields. For me, I would rather go get Decky at first glance. But what do you make of Xander?
Yeah, he's been a really popular target for players, DFS players this year so far. It feels like no matter what the price, people just keep stuffing him in. I wonder if now that he's 10K, that might calm down a bit. And the fact that he doesn't have any course history to go off of. Look, he was ripping it on his approaches in WGC Mexico. So I don't mind taking a shot with him here. It's probably going to come down to ownership for me. If people like pay up for Bryson and Fleetwood and Xander ends up being like 5% or even 10% lower, I will definitely take a shot with him here. He's a type of player too. I know he doesn't have the course history, and we have seen winners here, obviously, played here before. But he's a guy who went into the Tour Championship on his first go round and won, right? So I'm not too afraid of that with a player like Xander, who just doesn't really seem to factor in those kind of things with his results. So it doesn't have that kind of fear factor. So I think the price is probably right. I think it's good enough to keep players to keep his ownership at least low enough that I'll probably end up having at least a piece of him. It's just a matter of does he get the putter going this week? Because you do have to sink some putts here. I mean, I think when I was looking at the stats this morning, the last 6 winners have all ranked T8 or better in strokes gained putting. So for the week of their win, Xander hasn't really had that kind of putting week yet, and now it's Bermuda. So we'll see. I still like him, but like I said, it's really kind of going to be an ownership thing for me this week with him.
That's the one thing. I mean, I'm the biggest Rory guy there is, but when Rory won here, he gained 10 strokes putting, which is, if Rory gains 10 strokes putting, he's going to win. Let me tell you.
He wasn't even playing good that week. Like, he's coming off like a miscut and like a T50 that year. So there you go.
Absolutely. Like, this is not the Rory. Back then I remember people being like, you're like DJ is just the king. And that was a long time ago now. It seems like another world. But looking down a little, Sal, you already mentioned that you might have some interest in maybe starting with someone in this next range when we've got Adam Scott, champ from last week, and Sungjae, Patty Reed, Ricky. Brooks is really dropping 9,200 now. Then Day and Rose, who I honestly thought might be even lower, to be honest. What do you make of the next batch of guys?
Yeah, it's all over the place in terms of you get starting off with just 3 of the 3 past winners, and then you end up having a bunch of guys whose game that we were talking about at the top of the show is in question. And then there's one guy in there, Jason Day, who you just keep getting low ownership on him. And so at the top of it, I think Sungjae 9,500, if you're looking to like start lineups, I think he's still fine. Coming off the win, is he going to win back to back? I mean, probably not, but he's still fine at 9,500. You don't need the win there. But I think Patrick Reed is the one that I like the most if you were to like just fade the whole top range and want to start a lineup with a couple of 9K range guys. I mean, everything from the game has been fine. I mean, he had a little blunder missing the cut at the Sony, but everything else, T10 at the Farmers, obviously the win in a really loaded field at the WGC where he gained almost 12 strokes putting. And like you said, if that happens again here. But yeah, it's 9,400 I think looks good now in the top 10. And then Jason Day is somebody that I like mainly from a GPP ownership perspective. Talking about Xander, yeah, he's like, it's like Xander, Hovland, Morikawa, they're just always over-owned for what they should be. Probably going to happen again this week with 10K flat Xander. But a guy like Jason Day, it's just continuous worries around, is he injured? Is he trying? But he's looked good in the events that we've seen him at this year, events that he's thrived in like Pebble. But if he's 9,100 and going to go, I don't know, 5-6% on like we've been getting him at this price tag, I'm okay getting there.
Yeah, Day is tricky. I see him 28-1 in the betting market. He's got to keep it out of the thick stuff here. You can get in serious trouble in this rough. But Jeff, what do you make of the next range with the Aussies? And then even throw Tony Finau, a friend of the show in chat. Nathan really likes Finau, 33-1 in the betting card. Do you have interest in him and guys like Ricky that we've already talked about from last week?
So, in this range, I think all these guys have question marks, which is kind of good from the fact that none of them are going to be chalky, so you can kind of pick and choose. And I mentioned Fowler off the top of the show. I mean, Ricky's just a guy who loves this event. He loves the Florida swing. I'm not convinced his game is as far off as people think. I mean, he's just kind of thrown in bad rounds, but he's actually been pretty good in spots too. Right now, his biggest issue seems to be around the greens, which is a little bit weird because he tends to be like the bread and butter. But I really do feel like he'll get it together for at least one stop in Florida, and this could definitely be it. I think he's got too much respect for this event to just come in and not give it his full effort at the very least. And when I start to look at the record of the other guys around him, I mentioned Brooks. His ball striking wasn't good, his putting wasn't good last event. We got the knee issues. Reed, I could kind of perhaps get behind, but Ricky for me is going to be the target in this range. I really do feel like, again, some of these issues are overblown. It's kind of just come down to like one round. First round last week, there was one round in Phoenix. Otherwise, he hasn't been that bad. So I really feel like you're going to get a week where it all comes together for Fowler soon. And it's probably going to happen in Florida. He's my target there. I think I can probably get behind this Finau thing because I do not trust Rose right now. Jason Day, I might have a little piece of. I think he's always in play, especially in an event where putting does seem to get a little bit emphasized. But I think I'll probably be getting behind some Finau. I think Stenson will soak up a little bit of ownership from him too, so he probably won't be hitting like the uber chalk like he almost always does. I think that's a play. Again, I got to look into it a little bit more here. We're obviously talking Monday, but Finau's a guy who's going to be on my list probably for GPPs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Finau, he hasn't played here in a couple of years, but the last time he did play here, he absolutely smoked tee to green. Just couldn't figure it out on the greens, and that's always, to me, something you kind of want to see. Just to put a finishing touch on Ricky, listen, I'm not saying this, you could justify a lot of things with him, but he didn't play in Mexico. He didn't play at Genesis. We just haven't seen him that much. I don't think it's that crazy to come into Honda, not have your best, miss basically on the number, and be just fine long term. I don't know if this is like, even though, like I said, I backed Rose in the outright market, to compare Rose and Ricky in terms of what's going on right now, to me is apples to oranges. One is consistently leaking strokes. Ricky's just doing kind of like what Ricky does at times. So that's my take on that. So I assume you're in line with that, or do you see it something bigger with Ricky?
No, yeah, I think that's what it is. I think just the changes that he's going through, just swing-wise, mechanics-wise, and if you're not going to actually have just the mental competition of it all that often and be in events, yeah, there's going to be some rust there, and showing up to the champion course and doing that is not going to help you out.
Speaking of haven't seen a guy, so Stenson's here. You knew he was going to come over to get some reps before the Players. We saw him during the Middle East swing. He's 8,800. He's in with guys like Benyon, Leishman, Fitzy, Morikawa. Sal, I mean, what do you think of Stenson, who we haven't seen, and then some of these guys where it's really a collection of a lot of different types of players?
Yeah, this 8K range looks really appealing. I'm okay getting to Stenson here. I mean, it's nice that he's been playing overseas, so it's not like he's just coming in off his victory at the Hero and we haven't seen him in a while. So I like him in that range. I mean, we talked about Finau. I'm fine with him as well. So the top of this 8K range looks really strong to me. You get a little bit of the murky 9K range, but how some of the players are playing, get some low ownership on them. But really interesting to see how the ownership is going to turn out here. You have Stenson with, at least in this range, and maybe the 8 and 9K range combined, maybe some of the best course history here. You have Benny Ann coming off of the hot 3 rounds in the hot weekend where he just pushed, finishing T4 at the Honda. He usually soaks up ownership as well. So I'm going to be really interested to see what comes there. One guy who's appealing to me, I mean, you had the win in 2017 from Mark Leishman, but I believe they named him an ambassador. I don't know if somebody can check that for this. I believe he's just part of the operations of this tournament. So if that's something that you think stays on the mind and not as much focus on the actual events and have to respond to some other responsibilities, might make him a little bit less appealing.
Well, that's your boy, Jeff.
Yeah, I feel like I should know this, but I don't. Yeah. I think Sal's right though. I think that he does have some kind of connection to this tournament. If he's just sponsored by it or he's got some obligations, I don't think he's like Phil with the Amex or Tiger with Genesis, but I think there is some kind of connection there. So it is something to consider, maybe look into. He's got a fantastic record here though. I like this course a lot for Leishman. Kind of takes an all-around game, which is what he has. He's putted well in these greens, but I assume he'll be kind of popular figure there. 8,600, like him behind Benny and Finau. Some of these guys, like he's in Rose, he's outperformed. So I'm not too worried about it, but it's definitely something to take note of. And like I said, I don't know his exact role, which again, I feel a little bit bad because I should. I mean, I am like the president of the Mark Leishman fan club. So, I definitely like the price. Otherwise,
What about Fitzmagic? Any love? Runner up here last year. Looking over his API performances, he's a good putter, so I don't think this is that crazy, but he's gained at least 3 strokes putting 4 straight times here. That's what he's going to have to lean on once again. Do you like him in a similar range, as someone like Leishman?
I think Fitzpatrick he hasn't really, I've been kind of waiting to see it, like to see if the ball striking and everything is going to come together. Could easily happen here. I don't know. This like Sal kind of nailed it. This range feels like there's so many good options to choose from. I don't know if I necessarily need to go there with Fitzpatrick when you have Morikawa and even Bubba, a guy I'm kind of interested in this week. So I'll probably stay off him. Again, it's Monday. I mean, I'm going to look into a few other things here, and I could possibly have my mind changed. But at this point in this range, I'm going to want to get a piece of Benian because I do every week. Stenson feels like a good core cash game target. I already mentioned Finau, and then below him, if I want to get a piece of Bubba, I can't play everyone in this range. So Fitzpatrick is probably going to be like a fade for me. But that range is going to be a popular one for me to hit up because it does feel like the 9K one has a few more question marks this week, which is usually strange because usually it feels like it's the other way around. So you never know. I don't have a super hot take on Fitzpatrick right now. He's just kind of been muddling, doing it with the putter. He's got a good course history here, and it'll pop at some time. But I'm not really a guy I feel like I have to take a chance on this week yet.
Yeah, ownership will tell the tale for me. I have articles getting ready to be posted for tomorrow. I just want to write a couple things up on the ownership side. Fitzy, to me, almost feels like a cash play as well. He's making a lot of cuts. He just hasn't really popped yet. He is next to Morikawa, though, Sal, and that's a guy that you mentioned it. I don't listen. People think that I hate Morikawa, but it's not that I hate him. Everyone else just over owns him. I was an all-out fade with him at WGC Mexico. That actually worked out pretty well. I have some interest at 8,400, but not if he's mega popular. I'd honestly rather take the savings maybe as someone like Bubba, and then we have a couple Englishmen with Lee Westwood, who played well last week, and Hatton to round out the 8,100 price tag.
Yeah, so every single week this year that he's played on tour, you've seen 15% or higher ownership in the biggest GPP, and it's been on average around 18 to 20%. So yeah, he's one of the most popular players, similar to Xander in that regard. But I'm very interested to see if that's going to get pulled down. If I had to bet, I'd say he's still the most popular player in this range. Maybe Benny Ann's close with him. But maybe it'll get pulled down to like a 15% number, the low end of what we've seen from it. If that's the case, I'm fine going back to him. The biggest thing for Morikawa this year is just his putter's been like absolutely broken. If he had just a neutral round with his putter, and you could say this for so many guys, but he would be finishing 3 top 10 finishes probably. I mean, he's been lurking around top 20s when losing 4 strokes with his putter. So 8,400, this is the spot just historically, like Jeff referenced earlier, it's one of the more correlating spots for long-term putting. So not as great for Morikawa there. So if he is over-owned, I'll be fine getting below it. But yeah, like 10, 12% of Morikawa is probably where right now I could feel comfortable with. It's just a loaded 8K range, so I think it's going to be really distributed.
Yeah, Morikawa, he actually got in this event in 2018, lost 7.5 strokes putting. Now, that's not going to happen again, but it's not good. So as we work down, I mean, Jeff, this is where we've got Hovland, Billy Ho, Max Homa from the cloud, 7,900. Phil. Now we're getting really dangerous as we get into the mid-range. Wyndham Clark. I mean, this is, to me, really bizarro pricing, but maybe I'm just not looking into the form of guys like Homa because it feels like a stretch.
Yeah, there's a couple guys down here who seem okay. I mean, Answer too, I'd probably add to that. Like, These guys have been playing pretty consistent all year, right? So you kind of understand why, but yeah, the rest of it looks, pick and choose. I mean, Phil being up there, I'm just going to bypass. He doesn't even exist to me this week. I'm not going to roster Phil. And then you have guys who've been playing well in spots or have some kind of course history to deal with. So, I mean, no one really stuck out for me in this range either. I'm not super interested. Kisner played well in his last start. He's got a top finish here. That's a guy I could see myself, being a little bit overweight on for sure. I just like Kisner because he's consistent when he gets in these modes. It's just really waiting for the hot week of putting, and it could easily happen here. Like I said, it's an event where, guys have just shown up with a putter and out-putted people. So it's definitely kind of a Kisner thing that could happen. Wyndham Clark is kind of the same. I mean, he's obviously a younger player, but that dude can absolutely roll it. So This feels like more of a GPP range for me. I know when I was looking this morning, I certainly liked taking the savings on the guys in the lower 7K range, kind of similar to last week, where I just felt like 75 and under was very similar upside or consistency to the guys 75 and above. I think the interesting to see if people will bite on Charles this week. I haven't looked into the stats, but I'm pretty sure Charles was like lucking out with the putter until basically like the last few holes last week, which was good for me. I was way overweight Charles. I took the chance last week. He was like 4% owned, but I'm wondering if people are now going to bite and he's going to show up with a bad one. We'll see. Like I said, I haven't really looked into his stats from last week, but
so I don't know. Charo was either like a triple mega mind sharp play or it wasn't, and everyone got bailed out. He gained 9 strokes putting.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That I wasn't sure, but I was pretty sure he gained something insane like that.
Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. He gained 4.8 strokes on the approach. He did hole out from the middle of the fairway, so that's a little inflated. He lost 5.5 off the tee. But keep in mind at Honda, you can get crazy stats because if you go in the water on a tee shot, it's going to really muddy the waters. If you go in the water on your approach, it can look bad. But he did gain 9 strokes putting. So not to jump up a little too much, but what do you make of Hovland coming off? He could not handle Honda. Didn't seem like he was his game translated there. Do you have any interest in him at flat 8K with what I don't think will be nearly as much interest as we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy that you're seeing like 10 to 15% ownership every single week on, around average ownership, but I'm not as interested this week. So maybe that's the week to get on him. But like in that exact same lower 8K range, I like Hatton a lot this week. I probably would prefer Hatton to Hovland. I think Hatton's one of my favorite plays just on the slate at the price point that we saw him at, just suspecting some sort of lower ownership. But yeah, Hovland, I don't know how much I'm going to get to him. It was almost like telling when he gets priced up after the win and just not playing there. He started off fine and then it just all went downhill. So yeah, missing the cut, lost 6 strokes total. So yeah, I'm not as high, at least on Monday, on Hovland right now.
Yeah, I think I fall in line with you. Looking for me, Ian Poulter's a guy I'm going to stick with. He didn't pay me off, but he didn't hurt me. Actually thought he played better than he scored last week. He's 76. Jeff, I mean, are you looking for guys in that range when you say the sevens, or do you think you can even go like to the Norins and that down to the lower 7K range in terms of interchangeable pricing?
Yeah, no, I'll be heavier on guys like even below that, although I will pick and choose. Like I'm agree with you on Poulter. I think you can stay on him for another week. I think that's absolutely fine. I actually like the Hatton call too. But yeah, for me, other than maybe some Poulter, maybe some Answer or Kisner, like I'm looking to kind of go a bit lower. I mean, I think you got guys like Bud Colley's playing well, Harris English, McNeely. I mean, sure, a couple of those guys will be popular. I think Colley won't be. I think Colley could be like the pivot play there. But, these guys have just as much upside or play just as well or better than the guys in the high 7K range. And I think Noren, he missed the cut once in Puerto Rico. I know it was a weak field event, but it's kind of a putting contest. So it's not something I would put a ton of weight into. The guy was making cuts left and right before. You got Scott Piercy down here. I just like the value you're getting on this range. I think it's going to let you fit in, do more on the upper tier guys. So again, it kind of breaks down similar to what it was last week for me. Kind of feel like the upper 7Ks feel like a bit of a dead range, just not uber excited right now anyways about anyone up there, but definitely more excited about the savings in the lower 7K.
Lower 7K is going to get me in trouble. I can already tell.
Well, it got me in trouble last week, so yeah. I guess I'm going back to the well. But
it's definitely going to get me in trouble. I'll be, I'm interested to see what Super Draft does with the multipliers, because if any of these guys are massive multipliers, I may go there. But man, I am nervous, Saul, when I look at like Noren, Glover, and chat. We have to talk about him. People are talking about Molinari. That's a no for me, dog. Not going to happen. What do you make of these guys? Even Knox at 7,200 once again.
Yeah, all of them are, exactly how you were explaining it. Knox is somebody that I just always end up getting to. And
always.
Last week was my biggest, just pulling me down in all my lineups, pretty much preventing so many 6 out of 6s. But yeah, those guys, I mean, Grillo, I'll have some of because I always do. But those guys are, he's there too. Those guys are pieces that I'll have just small shares of. But There's some other guys. I like Ryan Moore a lot, at least for the way that this course should set up in terms of approach play, kind of bet on his approach play at that point. We've seen him get hot this year at the Amex. He was fine at Genesis the last time that we saw him on tour. So Ryan Moore stands out a little bit. Kevin Na, very similar to Ryan Moore in terms of finishes, just a missed cut, or you're getting like a T15 out of him this year. So those two players, 73, 7,400 respectively. I'm fine getting to both of those. They're the ones who stood out the most to me. On the top end, I'll always get to some Scotty Scheffler. I'll get to some Ian Poulter, like you were saying. And I mean, Max Homa is all the way up at 7,900 now, but I've been playing him for the last like 3 or 4 events. So I'm sure I'll be getting to some of him. And just that's me personally trying to ride out the heater on him. Probably at 7,900, though, might be a time to jump off.
Listen, I mean, there is something to that. And you, truth be told, you want to evaluate guys face up. Like, you don't want to say, I haven't played him, I'm not going to jump on now. Like I'm saying with Homa. I'm interested to see what he does in a Florida swing. He's a Cali guy. Been playing fantastic, though. Jeff, Harris English, Chad just pointed this out, and I think it's someone worthy of talking about. He could potentially be mega chalk again. Paid everyone off at Honda, 7,400. Boy, I'll tell you, at first glance, I'm going to try pretty hard to look elsewhere. Do you have any thoughts on him and what could be a very chalky Harris English?
It really does suck that his price didn't move, basically.
Dropped, yeah.
Look, I hit him up. I got some good odds on him at 110. So I hit him up on each way top 5 and to win. And that's basically a hedge move on my part. I'll probably just fade him, like you said. I can't see him being less owned than last week at the same price after, like you said, he came through for everyone. So, yeah, it sucks. I kind of want to play him because I like this setup. He's a guy who can get hot with the putters. He's got a good all-around game. His off-the-tee game is way more consistent this year. But it's still Florida. It's still Harris English. It's not like he can't throw a 78 in or something. His ball striking was a little bit up and down through the week, and it's been good in spots, but it's still elements of shaky. So it's not like he's a sure thing. I think we brought up Ryan Moore, Kevin Na, Bud Cauley. I think all those guys are good pivots. I'll probably throw in a little Harris English just for FOMO purposes, but I'm definitely probably going to be underweight on him in DFS. Like I said, I hedge my bets with the betting at getting a good number, but yeah, it sucks because I think if he was priced, let's say 8K or something, you could play him. But I see ownership being similar to last week, which it's probably going to be a fade for me too.
Yeah, I that's just not going to happen. I'm not saying I'm not going to have some Harris English, but if he's really popular, there's no chance I get overweight. I just can't do it. Working down, we see the Wolfman is at 71. He hasn't been playing good. I'm not even going to talk about Griot. The one thing, and I can't believe I'm trying to justify this as a benefit, but he's been so bad that I actually haven't had to sweat it. Like, he used to just miss on the number every week, and it would be excruciatingly painful. Now he's just like 15 shots off the cut line, so you don't really have to pay attention if you roster him, but it's not good. Working down, guys like Taylor Gooch, interesting. Keegan is here. And then we dip into the sixes, Sal. Chad already brought up Matthew Neesmith. He's making a lot of cuts, but is there any names that stand out when we look for the GPs right so far?
Yeah, so to finish up the 7K range, I like Carlos Ortiz. Just DraftKings-wise, he's able to score. I mean, I think he's like top 30 in this field in DraftKings scoring, makes a ton of cuts, fine on approach. So it looks good as sort of like a lower 7K guy that I'd rather put him in there than some of these 6K range. But you just get a lot of shaky players at this point in terms of what their game is, and really just relying on the hot putting week to finally come on a spot where you need it the most. So like guys like Corey Connors always stand out from that regard, but might go a little bit lower on him than I have been as of late, just the way that the course sets up. But going down to like 6,800, I like both Wallace and Grillo here, or Griffin here. I think that they both stand out. I think that the numbers in the betting market are interesting on Wallace just because of his upside in terms of like has an actual ability to win, close out on a weekend, mental fortitude, if you will. But I like the price points on them. Monto, that we know can just get hot with a putter, and that's what he's going to deem to do here. Wallace with that type of upside at this price point, both at 6,800, I'll probably have at least out of this upper 6K range, maybe overall the most of them.
Wallace is interesting. He got cut on the number. He hasn't, I think it's pretty obvious he's not playing like he was last year. But this is a really low price tag. Yeah. He's with the Harry Higgses of the world, guys like that. Jeff, in these ranges, I know for me, I try to just build to like a narrative with the teams, like guys like Varner serve interest on maybe some aggressive teams. Gooch on iron teams, someone like Bo Hostler on a putting team. What do you really do when we're getting to guys that are going to have red flags, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to what you're weighing. Consistency, upside, like you said, are you looking for a guy who's just been all over the place, but he brings you good upside, like a Matt Wallace, a guy who's just, you want to play the pedigree. I don't have a problem with that, dipping into him in GPPs a little bit. He does look like he's maybe getting a little bit closer. I might side with Danny Willett just because Danny Willett, I feel, is in a little bit of the same boat, but he has been making cuts. He's been playing a little bit better than Matt Wallace. So, but those guys kind of fall into the same category. And then, Taylor Gooch is just a player who, again, if I had just used Taylor Gooch and just kept riding his made cut streak, well, honestly, I might have won a GPP last week. That's how close it was for me between him and like Keith Mitchell. So I think if you want that consistency, just guys who are going to be able to grind out cuts and just looking for like a good hot Sunday from a guy like Gooch, it's completely fine. But so that's kind of my take on the upper range. I don't mind even dipping down further. Like you mentioned, Bo Hostler. That's a player I wish I had used a little bit more of last week. I used a bit of him, but I mean, this is a guy who's not making many bogeys right now. He didn't in Puerto Rico anyways, and he played pretty good outside of like one round last week. And I'd also throw Patrick Rogers out there, who, despite this being Patrick Rogers' 9th week in a row, his ball striking actually seems to be getting better. He was 21st in strokes gained approaches last week, which is really good for him because he typically loses on approaches and then gains everywhere else. It's interesting to note, like, this the guy's got a top 10 here. So I'm really interested in those two guys. Mitchell could be due for a bounce back. He's been all over the place with his irons. Absolutely terrible in round one, but then he bounced back and gained like 2 strokes with them in round 2 last week. So I'm looking at Hostler and Rogers down there. Again, though, it kind of depends on what your narrative is. Do you want guys who've been grinding it out like Rogers and Gooch, or do you just want to take a shot with a guy like Wallace and Willett, who are obviously have the pedigree?
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's really just about organizing what you want to do. Doc Redman kind of caught my eye. He was Thursday. I felt like a genius. Friday, I felt how I look right now is not a good situation with the doctor. But I mean, Sal, is this a week again at first glance where you think maybe you can really dip? Because last week I found myself pretty comfortable with guys like, I had a couple guys at flat 6 even. And although Chris Kirk did not work out, I thought that concept could be effective in some of these Florida events.
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the guys in the upper 6K range we touched on, Doc Redman would be like the lowest that I would go probably in this field, coming off of 4 straight made cuts before that Honda miscut. But yeah, just the way that I'm sizing it up right now, like if I was to build just one lineup, maybe not for cash, but just GPP one lineup, I think just the 8K range is loaded. If you find 3 guys, one in the 9K range, you don't have to get to this as much. Obviously, if you want to play Rory, you're probably going to find yourselves rostering some of Lanto and Doc Redman, but I'm completely fine early on trying to play around with just touching the 7K range at the lowest.
There's certainly ways to do that. Especially, you talked about at the top of the show, like if you don't play Rory, you're going to free up a ton of salary right off the bat. So it's just about how you want to structure it. I don't think I want to go super low. That's something that, tomorrow me and Tim Frank will get into. And then certainly on Wednesday when ownership comes out and the projections here behind the paywall come out. If you haven't signed up and you want to, PGA Strategies, the promo code, 50% off your first week. I tell people the same thing. Honestly, just give it a try. Like, may not be for you, but it may be for you. Just come in for a week, get Slack, see what's up. You can see the tools, give them a try. And I do think you really will enjoy it. So we'd love to have you guys inside the ropes, for lack of a better term. But oh God, I'm just scrolling and it's just getting worse. Like Siwoo Kim is on my screen. Kevin Chappell is on my screen. I think I'm with Sal in the sense that this seems almost unnecessary unless you really jam up top, Jeff. Do you think you'll have a cutoff maybe in the mid 6s as well?
Yeah, I think 63 for me. Like Robbie Shelton, I might give a look to too, but Redmond definitely, I think, is interesting at that level. You can make some cases just from pedigree points, but I just don't think you need to this week unless you're just making like 150 lineups. You want to make a couple really unique ones. Perez is down here too. He's 64 even. So 63 is almost certainly going to be the cutoff for me unless I somehow fall in love with one of these guys. Maybe I'll talk myself into Kevin Chappell shares. I don't think I'm going to do that this week. So I don't think you need to do it. Obviously you have Rory up there. If you want to make some like Rory Fleetwood stacks, you might consider it. But I really feel like there's a couple guys at 63 and realistically you shouldn't be dipping down there that much anyways. So I think for me, like I mentioned those guys at 66. Obviously, I haven't taken a huge look. There might be a couple other guys below that, but that's probably going to be my main cutoff. With I might dip down there a little bit more once or something, but yeah, it's not a range I'm going to be heavy on or anyone heavy on down there.
Yeah, I mean, and these are names that we'll dig into on the shows and where ownership gate. Mark Hubbard did rack up a ton of birdies. Charlie Hoffman is sitting there. But listen, there's a lot of reasons to look for flyers. It's just about prioritization. Before we duck on out of here, Sal, any final thoughts just at your first look for API?
Yeah, I think just kind of what I've been stating, that I'm okay with these balance builds because of a murky 9K range, but you probably get a lot of low ownership on players who have win upside there, and then a loaded 8K range. Do think that the top of the 6K range has some pieces like Wallace and Alonso, and then Brandon Matthews, I believe, is making his PGA Tour debut at 6K flat. So if you want to try and catch lightning in a bottle with probably just a made cut, maybe that's the lowest you can go. Definitely is the lowest you can go, but maybe you roster him.
That's a made up person. Who is that? Brandon Adams.
The only reason I know him was I think there was a story. I don't know if it was not in a PGA official event, but it might have been like on this exact course. I remember seeing a story like last year or something. My friend sent it to me about how he was like going for a putt to force a playoff or something, and a special needs child like ran onto the course and he missed it, and they didn't give him a redo. But then he actually he just showed compassion, ended up supporting, and from there now he's like started an organization and things like that.
You know what's funny? I remember when that story happened. Had no idea his name was Brandon Matthews. Well, that's good. Good for that guy. I will be rooting for him. I just Googled him. He's a Temple Owl. Go Brandon Matthews. I'm not rostering him, but I
was going to say, you're going to roster him now? Is that
absolutely not? But definitely going to be rooting for him. And we'll see. This is an invitational. It's a slightly easier cut. I'll dig into it, but I don't know the first thing about him. But I do remember that story, and that's really cool. Any final thoughts, Jeff, before we duck on out of here?
No, this has been an event where players have come kind of out of nowhere. No, I wouldn't say completely out of nowhere, but they've kind of come alive here. You got Molinari last year, Rory the year before. Like we mentioned, he wasn't playing well when he won, and even Leishman the year before that, he wasn't exactly trending. Like he was 101 to win. So don't be shocked if some of these guys were a little bit down on, like maybe like a Brooks, maybe a Justin Rose, and like we said, Ricky, and a couple others. Don't be shocked if one of these guys just come here and just start playing well, because it's happened here 3 of the past 4 years. Obviously, we've got a Matt Every, we didn't even mention either, story. So weird things can happen at this event.
Yeah, in Matt Every's case, twice. Lightning can strike twice. Justin Rose, 40-1. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying. On that note, chat, it's great to be back. I mean that sincerely. I have always a fun time. It's one of my favorite shows of the week. Glad I can make it, and glad you guys stopped in. On your way out, like I said, if you can hit the like button, support the show. We really do appreciate it. And thanks to Super Draft. Get over there. We'll be talking about that when their pricing drops tomorrow. We're going to duck on out of here. If you have any questions, find us all on Twitter. Find us in Slack. You know the drill. But good luck, everyone. And I'll be back tomorrow, 2:30 Eastern, with Tim Frank breaking down API once again.